Good morning and happy Saturday. My name is Latavia Alexander. I'm the owner and principal attorney of LA Legal Solutions. I want to welcome you to this month's Legacy Conversations. With this being, well, before I get into the topic for today, I just always like to give a little background intro in terms of what this series is and why I do it. So I have my law firm focuses on building and protecting your legacy. So we work with individuals as well as entrepreneurs, those who are currently in business or thinking about starting a business. And so the practice areas are business law, so business formation, business consulting strategy on starting and expanding as well as sustaining your business. Also provide trademark and copyright registration and consulting and estate planning. And so estate planning can look like planning for your individual life as well as legacy, including wills, trusts, power of attorney, advanced medical directive. And then also for my business owners, that part of that planning includes not just planning for yourself, but also for your business and what happens in the event that the same way that we think about, okay, if I were to get sick or something happens where I'm not able to make decisions for myself, I need to appoint someone to make those decisions on my behalf or to help me out. For ourselves, for us individually, or for our families, we also need to make sure we're doing that and thinking about it for our business as well. And so with May being National Small Business Month, the week has already passed, but since we are in the month of May, I wanted to divert the conversation a little bit, still within that realm of legacy, having a conversation around legacy, but focusing on those who are in business, or even if you're still thinking about starting a business, just making sure that you add this to that list, your toolbox of things to think about. And so that's succession planning. You've heard the word succession. There's a big show called Succession where it talks about, essentially succession is what happens after. In this, if you don't own a business, if you work for an organization, you may have heard it as well because it takes on different looks or roles. And so within a large organization, if you're an employee, you might hear your leadership or someone in human resources talking about, okay, we need to make sure we're prepared for when the director of the agency retires, or if you have someone who's been working for an organization for decades and they have this wealth of knowledge. Hey, has anybody been, has that person been writing it down? Has anyone been taking notes? Have they been training anyone to be in place to take over? It's been a couple years now, but I remember with Hampton University. I have a lot of friends who went there, and Dr. Harvey had been the president for years and years. And so I guess as he was preparing to retire, part of the succession planning for the university was, hey, has he, he had been, my understanding is there was someone that he had been of a mentor, they had been a mentee to him, and he had taken some time, a couple years even, of where he was mentoring this person, training them, making sure that they had not only the education and skill set, but also just that people knew them, that they understood what the role of president was on paper, as well as, some of those intangible things, the things that are not always spoken of or that don't fit neatly into a job description. But making sure that someone was ready. And so that's what it looked like in that larger, the university setting of when he was ready to retire and step down. There was someone who was prepped and ready, who had the institutional knowledge to be able to step in and take over with as little downtime as possible. And so, granted, like I said, that is a larger organization. You're talking about a university, a lot more moving parts, but the same is true for those of us who own businesses. Um, so think about it. So, like for myself, I have my law firm. I am the only member of my company, but what succession planning looks like for me and for likely a lot of you who are in business for yourselves. So if it's just you're a single member LLC, or you're a sole proprietor, or even if you are a company where you have a few employees or contractors, one of the things that kind of the groundwork of this conversation is thinking about how do you run, how does it operate, um, what is the culture of your company, how are things done? And so some of this can be included on the front end when you're planning. And so if you have an LLC, although it's not required by law, you should have an operating agreement. If you have a corporation, whether it be for profit or nonprofit, you need to have bylaws. And bylaws are required if you have a corporation, but in the whether it's your bylaws or your operating agreement, those talk about, hey, this is how the company is set up. This is how we run. This is how we function. These are the offices. This is how we manage profit. This is how we make decisions. But also in those documents, there are provisions. You should have provisions that talk about what happens in the event of illness or long-term illness. If a owner or member decides they want to retire or they want to sell their portion, what are the provisions? You talk about, hey, we are creating this organization for a definitive amount of time, or it's indefinite, or hey, when it is time to dissolve it, these are the steps that we follow. So that's kind of first and foremost. As you think about, even though we're just starting, you also need to be thinking about how is it going to end if it ends and what that looks like. So if you don't have one, a big part of succession planning is having an operating agreement or bylaws. You want to have, all companies should have some version of this, but standard operating procedures or policies and procedures that once again outlines, this is who we are, this is how we do things, especially if you have employees or if they're not full-time employees, if they're contractors, you want to make sure that you have something in writing that outlines how things go. It could be as simple as, this is how we answer the phones, this is how we file things, this is how we keep client files. For those in healthcare industries, this is how we administer prescriptions, or within, if you're in the fitness industry or beauty industry, this is, if I'm going to do, hey, I'm training someone on how to wash a client's hair. These are the steps involved in washing the hair. This is where we keep the products. This is how we clean. I know in healthcare, the barber side, or even beauty industries at the barber side of it, this is how we clean the tools. This is how we make sure everything is sanitized. For those in, like I said, if you're in the fitness industry, this is where we keep the equipment, how we store the equipment. This is the proper way to, interact with the client. If I'm teaching them a new exercise, this is the way to demonstrate it. So think about all the things that you do. I always encourage people, especially if it's just you or if it's a small number of people, you might not always be thinking about how you do it, but take some time and it could start off informally of writing down on a note paper or taking notes in your phone of, oh, well, this is how I answer the phone, or how I would want someone to answer the phone if I weren't here. This is how I want you to take notes. This is how I want you to store things. So that way, if I need to come back and find a record, I know how it's kept. Are we doing it alphabetically, or is there a numeric system? So those, what seem to be small things, are very big, especially, like I said, even if it's a temporary illness where you have surgery and you're just not able to work. Or like I said, I've talked about this in the past. When I had my daughter, I didn't completely stop working, but there was a period of time where, hey, I'm not in here doing things day to day. So I do have colleagues who I have spoken with and identified of, hey, in the event that I'm not able to do something, they are aware of how I run my business and where things are. And, I gave clients that person's contact information of, hey, I will be out or, unavailable for X amount of time. I won't be as responsive. It will take me a little longer to get back to you via email. But if you have something more pressing, here's the contact information for someone who you can speak with, who'll be able to help you in the interim. So that's a part of it. But when we're thinking long term of, hey, if let's say your goal is you don't want your business to sell, you've built it up, you want this to be a family business, you want it to, or you at least want it to remain in your family in the event that you retire or once you pass away. So like I said, there's some things you talk about in your operating agreement or bylaws, but you also want to put in place those documents in a plan, making sure that when you're doing your estate planning, if it's a will or if you're doing a trust, that you address those items in those documents. And so if it's, I want let's say for me, years down the line, if my daughter decides she wants to be an attorney and I say, hey, I want to leave my business to her, so I can put that on paper, but some of the other practical things that I need to be doing is making sure that I'm talking to her about, one, okay, is this actually what you want to do? Do you really want to do this? Are you interested in these areas of law? And then also making sure that over time I have her working with me, shadowing me, understanding, hey, this is how things are done, making sure she understands the culture, where we're going, where I'd like to see it go, but also thinking about what her goals and desires are and kind of writing out a roadmap of, okay, this is where we are, this is how things are being done, but in the future, this is how I would like it to go. Also making sure that within your, same as with individual planning, that you're thinking about who do you have who is your insurance with, your banking institutions, if you have investment accounts, your financial advisors or CPAs, making sure they're aware of what the plan is and that they know that either you're going to add an individual's name or certain individuals' names to your accounts to where they have access right away, or you put instructions in place to say, hey, upon this event, this triggering event, then this is what's to happen. And I apologize, I am at an event today, but I wanted to make sure that I still provided the legacy conversations on the day and time that I promised before. So I'm currently outside in the hallway of an event that I'm attending today um, to help me in terms of working on investing and building up my business. But like I said, I wanted to make sure that I still uh, kept my word to you all in terms of this monthly conversation. So I just want to recap a little in terms of how this is done. Um, in that, like I said, you want to start at the beginning of how are you setting up? What type of organization do you want to be? Who is involved in your organization in terms of who's running the day to day? Is it you? Do you have a team of people? And then what do you want to have happen in the event that you yourself are not available? Do you have a backup person who's listed like in terms of being able to manage day to day operations, or who's able to then step in and take over, and you want to make sure that they're able to take over with as little interruption as possible. When I used to work in higher education, one of the things they called it was a hit by the bus book. Now that's a bit extreme, but we would always have to make sure we had things written down in a way that if I were to be hit by a bus or something were to happen where I couldn't come to work the next day, or I was out for a short period of time, or I just wasn't coming back at all, that I had something in place that someone could come in, read over it, and be able to get started that day with as little downtime or interruption as possible. And so, like I said, if you've worked, if you've had a job, worked for a company or any organization where you had to play a role in that, or even if you think about training manuals when you started a job, I don't know about you, but I've worked jobs where I came in and there was nothing. It was very much on the job training, figuring it out as you go, or as some have said, building the plane as we're flying it. And so you want to, I would say, kind of keep that in mind of what can I do now to make life easier for myself, as well as a new employee or a new person coming in later to make their life a little bit easier. It also eases a lot of stress and I also want to point out that don't feel like, okay, I don't have either. If you're saying, hey, I don't have any of these things, I don't even have my operating agreement. It's okay. You're here, you're listening, we're having this conversation now. So now you know, and you can start. And so it's one of the things that I'm working on now. It should be live on the website within a week of, if you're not necessarily, hey, I know I don't have an operating agreement, but money is a little tight. I don't have it in the budget to hire an attorney or hire someone to write or draft an operating agreement for me. I prepared an operating agreement template. Right now, this one is for a single member LLC that you can purchase a template directly from my website, download it, and then add in your specific information, and then you have an operating agreement. And there are those clauses that I talked about in terms of how you plan for what happens if hey, you know what, this was nice, I don't want to do it anymore. How you want it to be dissolved or wrapped up, or also if you want to bring someone in, or if, let's say, it's owned by two people, it we include provisions about how it should be handled if there is a dispute. So like I said, that will be available within a week on the website for you to be able to purchase. So you can go to lalegalsolutions.com and purchase that template. and then you have your operating agreement, and you've already started on the plan. So if you're someone, you already have employees, or you're thinking about hiring employees, and it's like, hey, what do I do? Part of that planning is, okay, when they come in, what are the things that I need them to know right away? What are some things that maybe they can help me develop? You also, for any of you business owners, if you have or you're preparing, what are your assets? For those, do you have trademarks? If you have a business name, your brand, you have intellectual property that can and should be protected. And so if you secured trademark protection, federal trademark protection for your brand? Have you registered your copyrights to make sure that you have that federal protection? If so, where do you have that information? Do you currently have anyone are you licensing intellectual property from anyone else right now? So those are things. It's a matter of, hey, we want to get our house in order and make sure you have a clear accounting of what do you have, what are your assets, what are the business assets. If you are leasing property or you own property, making sure that it is something you have that written out of, clearly identifying and outlining how that intellectual property is to be handled upon your death or your passing, or if the business is dissolved, who maintains ownership, or if those trademarks or that copyright registration is in the name of the business, which it should be, then are those going to be canceled? Is someone responsible for canceling those registrations, or are you going to sell or transfer ownership to someone else once your business has dissolved? Or if it's a matter of, hey, I'm passing this business on to my family, make sure it's written in that operating agreement or in that trust or will, that it spells out that, hey, all I'm passing on or I'm conveying, whether that's being selling or you're leaving it as an inheritance to this person, all rights, property of the business. So in that respect, so long as the trademark, or let's say the trademark registration is titled in the business name, then ownership of it will also transfer to let's say that family member. But if you when you did your trademark or your copyright, if you got it in your personal name, then you need to go through the process of assigning your trademark to the business so that it'll go with the business. But if it's, let's say I have a trademark and I own it as Latavia and it's not owned by the business, if I give the business to someone else or I sell the business, I still have the trademark registration. I still own the right to the trademark. And so it's hey, are you selling the business, but then licensing the name to someone else? Or am I going to also assign the trademark ownership to the business and or to the person that I'm conveying the business to? So, like I said, I know that I'm going through a lot of this pretty quickly. But this is, once again, not meant to be hey, we're going to go do everything today, but it's a conversation starter. I want to give you some things to think about, so that if it wasn't on your radar, now it is. And you can take some time to think through, just do a review of, hey, where am I? One other thing that I offer is business audits. So if you're like, hey, I know I have some of these things, I don't even know what some of this stuff is that you're talking about. I'll be happy to talk to you and go into more detail about it so you can schedule a consultation, or schedule a business audit. And then we can go through kind of step by step of, hey, do you have what do you have? What don't you have? Or, okay, if you have them, if you have an operating agreement, but you say, hey, my operating agreement, I don't know if it talks about some of these things that you mentioned. Okay, hey, let's take a look. Let's review it and see where we can beef it up to make sure that it is accomplishing what you need it to. Or, hey, if it's a matter of, hey, I've got all the things, the legal stuff, but I'm not sure. I have colleagues and people within my network that I can connect you with to help you with some of those internal kind of the HR focused functions to make sure that you have those things in place. So if it's a matter of creating an SOP, getting an employee handbook, those are things that it's not necessarily a legal requirement all the time. In some cases it is, but it's one of those things, if it is it's a really, really great business practice to have. So that way, especially in the event of a situation where you have employees or there's a question or a dispute or someone claiming they didn't know. Well, hey, no, you have your handbook or you have the confidentiality agreement or whatever contract you have in place to reference to say, hey, no, this is how we do things. Here's a document showing that they signed off saying that they receive it and they understand how it works. Here's a record of the trainings that we did. So those are more of just the day-to-day, make sure you understand. But as I mentioned before, I am preparing to go to an event shortly. So this is going to be an abbreviated session today, but please be sure to stay tuned for next month. We will continue this conversation. It's our legacy, our life and our legacy is important for those of you, whether you have a business or not, you are alive. You have rights. You have the right to plan to say how you want things to go while you are alive, as well as once you've passed away. And so please don't ever feel like, oh, I don't have enough, or I need to get more before I make a plan, or I need to do this. All of the things we say, oh, I got to do this before. No, you have today. Now is all we have is today, the present. The past is gone. We don't know what tomorrow holds. So, like I said, my goal here is to just get us started having these conversations so that way you are more equipped for yourself, and also that you hopefully go and either share this video with a family member or friend, or you'll go and have a conversation. If you know someone who owns a business, even if you yourself, you don't, hey, have you thought about this? Or even on your job, asking them, thinking about what you do, especially if you're planning on leaving within the near future of, hey, or someone in leadership who's retiring, like, hey, do I know how they do this? Or do we have anything in place to make sure that, hey, if they leave, everything that they know doesn't just leave out the door with them, because that would be a very big headache and nightmare. But I thank you all again for tuning in this month for our legacy conversations. If you are watching, whether you're watching live right now or you will watch later, um, if you have questions about some of the other topics, all previous sessions are now on the LA Legal Solutions YouTube page. You can type in LA Legal Solutions or Legacy Conversations, and you can pull them up to watch, to review some of the previous sessions. So thank you. If you have any questions, if you would like to work with me on business formation and you have questions about trademark, copyright, or estate planning, please contact me on that. You can use the website lalegalsolutions.com, and that is solutions with a Z at the end, or email me info@lalegalsolutions.com, and on social media it is LA Legal Solutions. So multiple ways to find me. Would love to continue this conversation with you or work with you directly to help uh, work on some of your legal goals and needs. So thank you and have a great day.